The scent of burnt paper and stagnant koi pond water clung to Izuku Midoriya's uniform like a physical weight. He walked with his head bowed, his scuffed red sneakers dragging against the concrete pavement. The afternoon sun cast long, mocking shadows across the streets of Mizurufu. Around him, the city was alive with the hum of Hero Society, billboards flashing with Mount Lady's debut, the distant wail of police sirens, the excited chatter of civilians discussing the morning's villain fights. It was a world of miracles, a world of gods walking among men. And Izuku was completely, irrevocably barred from it. If you want to be a hero that badly, there's a quick way to do it. Take a swan dive off the roof of the building and pray you'll be born with a quirk in your next life. Katsuki Bakugo's words echoed in the hollow cavity of Izuku's chest, sharp and venomous. Izuku clutched his damp, scorched notebook tightly against his side. Hero Analysis for the Future, Volume 13. It felt less like a tool for his dreams now and more like a gravestone. Idiot, Izuku muttered to himself, his voice trembling as he forced a shaky breath through his nose. If I actually jumped, that would mean he instigated a suicide. Think before you speak, Kaken. Despite his weak attempt at rationalization, the tears still pricked at the corners of his eyes. He squeezed them shut, forcing himself into the cool, shadowed concrete of the underpass. It was a shortcut home, a quiet place away from the bustling crowds where he could just be miserable in peace. The tunnel was damp, echoing with the sound of his solitary footsteps. He looked up at the curved ceiling of the overpass, his grip on the notebook tightening until his knuckles turned white. I can still do it, he whispered to the empty air, though the conviction in his voice was bleeding out. Even without a quirk. I can be a hero. I have to try. I have to. A wet, sickeningly squelching sound interrupted his desperate mantra. Izuku stopped. The hairs on the back of his neck stood on end. He turned slowly, the dim light of the underpass illuminating a horrifying sight. From the grating of the manhole cover behind him, a mass of dark, putrid, dark green sludge was oozing upward. It defied gravity, pooling together, rising like a wave of toxic mud. Two bulbous, yellow eyes snapped open within the amorphous mass, fixing on Izuku with a look of manic, desperate hunger. A medium-sized invisibility cloak. The sludge villain gurgled, his voice a wet, vibrating rasp that seemed to echo inside Izuku's skull. Izuku's breath hitched. His body, trained to analyze villains, froze completely. A villain? Here? Why? Don't worry, kid, the villain sneered, launching himself forward with the speed of a striking viper. It'll only hurt for about 45 seconds. Then, it'll all be over. Before Izuku could scream, before he could even raise his arms to defend himself, the sludge slammed into him. It was like being hit by a tidal wave of cold, liquid rot. The sheer force knocked his notebook from his hands and sent him crashing onto his back. Then came the true horror. The sludge forced its way into his mouth, his nose, surging down his throat like a living, suffocating serpent. Izuku thrashed violently, his eyes widening in absolute, primal terror. He clawed at the viscous substance enveloping his face, his fingernails tearing through the slime, but it was like trying to grasp water. It just reformed, pressing harder, deeper. Stop fighting it, the villain crooned, his voice muffled through the sludge surrounding Izuku's ears. You're my hero, kid. I didn't know he was in the city. I gotta get out of here, and you're my ticket. Just let go. No. Izuku thought, his lungs screaming, burning with the desperate need for oxygen. No, no, no! He kicked his legs, his red sneakers scuffing futilely against the pavement. He tried to pull the slime away from his face, but his muscles were already beginning to weaken. The burning in his chest was agonizing, a fiery pressure building up as his heart hammered against his ribs like a trapped bird. Somebody. Izuku prayed, his vision beginning to blur at the edges, the world fading into a tunnel of dark, murky green. Somebody please, help me. He thought of his mother Inko, waiting for him at home, perhaps making katsudon. She would be waiting. And waiting. He thought of his notebook, lying in the dirt, its pages filled with dreams he would never achieve. I haven't done anything yet. The thought was a weak, dying ember in the encroaching darkness. I couldn't even save myself. Kaken, you were right. I'm just a Deku. The thrashing slowed. His hands, previously clawing with the strength of a dying animal, slipped away from the sludge and fell limply to his sides. 45 seconds. The villain had said. Izuku's vision went completely black. The agonizing burning in his lungs ceased, replaced by a terrifying, hollow cold. His heart gave one final, stuttering beat, and then, silence. Izuku Midoriya died in the underpass. Far away, yet intimately close, something drifted through the veil between worlds. It was a spark. A tiny, geometric star of pale, brilliant light. For centuries, it had wandered. It had skimmed the ruins of old Russia, darted through the rusted, vex-infested sands of Mars, and hidden from the chittering horrors of the hive on the moon. It had searched the solar system until it felt it had mapped every grain of cosmic dust. But it had never found its guardian. Then, the anomaly had occurred. A tear in the fabric of the universe, a violent ripple of paracausal energy that had swallowed the little light and violently spat it out into a world that made no sense. This world was Earth, but not its Earth. There was no traveler hanging in the sky. There were no fallen scavengers picking at the bones of the Golden Age. Instead, there were cities of glass and steel, filled with billions of humans who possessed strange, localized, biological magic. Quirks, they called them. Genetic mutations that altered physics. But it wasn't the light. It wasn't paracausal. It was just biology. The ghost, whose name was Aegis, had spent months in this strange reality, hiding in the upper atmosphere, despairing. If the traveler wasn't here, if the light was cut off, how could he ever find his guardian? What was his purpose? He was a ghost without a shell to fill, a lighter without a wick. Until today, Aegis had been floating aimlessly over a city called Muzurifu when he felt it. It was faint at first, a microscopic resonance in the cosmic background radiation. But to a ghost, it was louder than a supernova, a frequency. The specific, undeniable frequency of a soul destined to wield the light. A soul defined by devotion, bravery, and sacrifice. Aegis dropped from the sky like a falling star, turning invisible to the naked eye. He traced the frequency, desperation pushing his little inner core to spin faster and faster. He zipped through the bustling streets, unseen and unfelt, diving into the shadowed maw of a concrete underpass. He arrived just in time to see the light fade from the eyes of a green-haired boy. Aegis hovered, his optical sensor expanding as he scanned the scene. A monstrous creature of sentient sludge was inhabiting the boy's corpse, using it as a biological suit. The boy was dead. The spark had just extinguished. No, Aegis thought, his synthetic voice echoing only in his own mind. I didn't search for 500 years, cross a dimensional rift, and find you, just to lose you to a pile of sentient mud. Aegis's shell, a jagged, angular design of dark gunmetal gray and glowing cyan lines, expanded. The segments of his shell detached from his central eye, spinning rapidly as he drew upon the absolute maximum reserve of light he held within himself. He didn't care about the sludge creature. He didn't care about the biological rules of this universe. Aegis was a sliver of the traveler, a being of paracausality. He dictated reality. He aimed his central optic at the lifeless chest of Izuku Midoriya. There you are, Aegis whispered into the dark void of death. I've been looking for you for a very long time. A beam of pure, concentrated, blinding light erupted from Aegis's core. In the darkness, there was only cold. Izuku drifted in an endless, formless ocean of nothing. He had no body, no lungs to burn, no heart to ache. He was just a lingering awareness of his own failure. Then, a voice pierced the void. It sounded mechanical, yet impossibly warm and gentle. There you are. Suddenly, the ocean of nothingness ignited. It wasn't a gentle awakening. It was a violent, catastrophic supernova. A torrential flood of raw, crackling blue energy violently forcefully tore through the darkness, grabbing Izuku by the soul and dragging him upward. In the physical world, the sludge villain suddenly paused. He felt a vibration. Not from the ground, but from inside the meat suit he had just claimed. What the? The villain gurgled. The dead boy's chest was glowing. A blinding, cerulean blue light began to shine through Izuku's skin, illuminating his veins like a map of lightning. The air in the underpass instantly superheated. The smell of ozone and ionized air completely overpowered the stench of the sewer. Static electricity crackled along the concrete walls, shattering the overhead light bulbs in a cascade of sparks. Bzzzzzt. Ah! What is this? The sludge villain screamed, trying to detach himself from the boy, realizing suddenly that the vessel he had hijacked was turning into a live bomb. It was too late. Izuku Midoriya's eyes snapped open. The pupils were gone, replaced by a radiant, blinding blue brilliance. He inhaled. It was a massive, desperate gasp for air, drawing the very atmosphere into his lungs, and as his heart restarted with a thunderous thump, the light within him reacted to the threat that had killed him. Boom! A shockwave of pure arc light detonated from Izuku's body. It was a localized hurricane of electricity. The blast completely bypassed the physical laws of force and impact. It hit the sludge villain at the molecular level. The villain shrieked as the arc energy ripped through him. The immense, paracausal voltage superheated the water in the sludge, instantly flash boiling it. In less than a millisecond, the massive villain was utterly atomized, scattered into millions of microscopic, harmless droplets of evaporated grime that splashed violently against the tunnel walls. Izuku sat up, gasping, coughing violently. He clutched his throat, expecting to feel the slimy residue, expecting to feel the agonizing burn of suffocation. There was nothing. His throat felt perfectly fine. His lungs, previously starved and dying, expanded fully, drawing in deep, crisp breaths of ozone-scented air. He looked down at his hands. They were trembling, but they were whole. More than whole. He felt a thrumming vitality beneath his skin, a buzzing, electric energy that made him feel like he could sprint 100 miles without breaking a sweat. He was sitting in the center of a scorched crater. The concrete around him was blackened, swirling with intricate Lichtenberg figures, the fractal patterns of lightning strikes. What? Izuku stammered. His voice was steady, lacking the raspy weakness of someone who had just been choked to death. What happened? Where is it? The villain? He scrambled backward, his back hitting the cool concrete wall. He looked wildly around the tunnel. The monster was gone. Completely gone. Only scattered, steaming puddles remained. Take a breath, Guardian. You're all right now. Izuku froze. The voice was close. Right in front of him. He slowly looked up. Hovering at eye level, about 3 feet away, was a floating eye. It was a small, mechanical device, roughly the size of a baseball. It consisted of a glowing, bright cyan core, surrounded by an angular, geometric shell made of dark, scuffed metal. The pieces of the shell floated slightly apart from the core, spinning slowly, independently, as if suspended by a magnetic field. Izuku blinked. He rubbed his eyes. He opened them again. The floating eye was still there. It blinked at him, its mechanical iris contracting and expanding. A robot? Izuku whispered, his shock overriding his panic. His analytical mind, momentarily stalled by death, slowly began to reboot. Support gear? Did a pro-hero save me? Where are they? He looked past the floating machine, expecting to see a hero striding into the tunnel. No pro-hero, I'm afraid, the machine said. Its voice was expressive, sounding distinctly male, with a dry, almost relieved cadence. It was just me. And, well, you? The machine floated closer, dipping slightly in the air in what looked like a bow. I am a ghost. Actually, I am your ghost. My name is Aegis. Izuku stared. My ghost. Yes, Aegis said, the pieces of his shell clicking satisfyingly into a tighter configuration. I know you're confused. You have a lot of questions. But the most important thing you need to understand right now is that you are safe. The hostile entity has been neutralized. Neutralized, Izuku repeated dumbly. He looked at the scorch marks on the ground. He looked at his own hands again. I remember. I couldn't breathe. It was inside me. Izuku's breathing hitched as the memory assaulted him. The terror. The cold. The realization that he wasn't going to make it. I think I died. Aegis hovered closer, his blue optics softening, emitting a warm, comforting light. You did, Izuku. You died. The blunt confirmation hit Izuku like a physical blow. The world tilted. I died. I actually died. But I'm talking. I'm breathing. That's impossible. People don't just die and come back. No quirk can resurrect the dead without massive consequences, and even then, brain death occurs within minutes. Izuku began to mutter rapidly, a defense mechanism he fell back on when overwhelmed. The cellular degradation would be catastrophic. Not to mention the psychological trauma. If this is a quirk, it's unprecedented. A localized temporal reversion? Or maybe an instantaneous cellular regeneration ability? But I'm quirkless. The doctor said I have the extra joint in my toe, so... Izuku, Aegis interrupted, his tone amused but firm. Breathe. It wasn't a quirk. Izuku stopped muttering, looking up at the little machine. Not a quirk? No, Aegis said, floating up slightly to ensure he had Izuku's full attention. What you possess now, what I just woke up inside of you, is something far older and far more powerful than any genetic mutation on this planet. It's called the light. The light, Izuku echoed, the words feeling heavy, almost sacred on his tongue. I am a machine born from an entity known as the Traveler, Aegis explained, his optics scanning the perimeter, ensuring they were alone. My sole purpose, my entire reason for existence, was to find one specific person. A person capable of wielding the Traveler's light as a weapon and a shield to protect humanity. A guardian. I searched across stars, Izuku. I crossed through a rip in the fabric of reality itself, landing in this strange world of yours. I spent months searching here, thinking I would never find you. Aegis drifted forward, gently bumping his metallic shell against Izuku's forehead. It felt cool and solid, but I did find you. When you fought until your last breath against that creature, when you refused to surrender your spirit even as your body failed, that was the spark. You were brave, Izuku. You sacrificed yourself. And the light provides. Izuku felt a tear trace its way down his cheek. He had been told his entire life he was useless. A Deku. Someone who needed protecting, who could never protect anyone else. Even All Might, his absolute idol, if he had known Izuku was quirkless, would probably say the same thing. But this tiny, floating machine had searched the stars for him. It had looked at him, at his death, and deemed him worthy of a miracle. You brought me back, Izuku whispered, his voice cracking. I did, Aegis confirmed. And as long as I am with you, as long as my light shines, you can never truly be killed. You are a guardian now, Izuku Midoriya. Wielder of the arc, the solar, and the void. The laws of physics no longer apply to you. You make your own fate. Izuku swallowed hard. He looked at his hands, closing them into fists. He felt it again, that low, thrumming vibration of electricity. It wasn't just in his body. It felt like it was woven into his very soul. He concentrated on the feeling, remembering the explosion that had scattered the villain. A tiny spark of bright blue lightning arced between his knuckles. Izuku gasped, his eyes wide with wonder. It's real. I have a power. It's not just a power, Aegis corrected gently. It is a cosmic force of creation and destruction. And judging by how you atomized that creature upon waking up, I'd say you are a titan. A titan? Izuku asked, the hero nerd inside him instantly clinging to the categorization. The shield of humanity, Aegis said proudly. Titans are the wall against which the darkness breaks. They are warriors of immense strength, unbreakable resolve, and devastating close-quarters power. We have a lot of work to do, Guardian. You need to learn how to channel the light properly, or you're going to accidentally vaporize your bedroom. Izuku let out a breathless, half-sob, half-laugh. I can be a hero. With this, I can actually be a hero. You already are one, Aegis replied. Before Izuku could respond, a massive, thunderous noise echoed from the far end of the tunnel. Clang! The heavy iron manhole cover near the entrance of the underpass was blown completely off its hinges, flying through the air and embedding itself in the concrete ceiling. From the sewer opening, a colossal figure emerged. It is all right now, young man, boomed a voice that Izuku had heard 1,000,000 times through computer speakers and television screens. The voice was strained, thick with exertion, but it still carried the weight of absolute authority. For I am. The massive figure stepped into the dim light of the underpass. It was All Might. The symbol of peace. All Might froze mid-pose, his signature smile faltering slightly as he took in the scene. Izuku's jaw dropped. All Might! He's here! He actually came. Toshinori Yagi, operating under his hero persona of All Might, was exhausted. His time limit was virtually gone. He had lost the sludge villain earlier when it slipped away from his grasp, and he had been desperately tracking it through the city's sewer system, terrified that the monster would claim an innocent victim because of his carelessness. He had pushed his failing body past its limits to get here. He expected to find a hostage situation. He expected a grueling, desperate fight to rip a civilian from the villain's suffocating grasp. Instead, he saw a green-haired middle schooler sitting in the center of a scorched, lightning-scarred crater. The walls of the underpass were blasted with intense heat marks, and scattered across the floor, walls, and ceiling were thousands of tiny, steaming puddles of green sludge. The villain hadn't just been defeated. It looked like it had been hit by an orbital strike. All Might blinked, blood threatening to spill past his famous smile. He coughed it down, his blue eyes locking onto the boy. The kid looked perfectly fine. His uniform was slightly ruffled, but there wasn't a scratch on him. Ahem, All Might cleared his throat, standing up straight. It seems you have matters well in hand, young man. I was tracking this villain, but it appears he chose the wrong civilian to ambush. Izuku scrambled to his feet, his heart doing somersaults. All Might! It's you! You're really here! I am your biggest fan! I have your merchandise, your posters, I watch your debut video every single day. Izuku realized he was rambling and slapped a hand over his mouth, his face flushing crimson. All Might laughed heartily, though a keen observer might notice the slight grimace of pain beneath it. A true fan. I appreciate the support. Though I must ask. All Might gestured broadly to the blackened crater and the steaming remnants of the villain. Was this your doing, young man? A quirk of incredible caliber, to be sure. Izuku froze. His quirk. A second ago, he was quirkless. Now, he had vaporized the villain that the #1 hero had been chasing. Izuku glanced sideways. Aegis was hovering near his shoulder, completely silent. To Izuku's surprise, All Might didn't seem to notice the floating machine at all. He can't see him? Izuku thought. I'm cloaked. Aegis's voice rang directly inside Izuku's mind, making the boy jump slightly. It's best we keep my existence a secret for now, Izuku. The sudden appearance of extraterrestrial AI and paracausal forces might cause a panic. Tell him it's your quirk. Technically, to them, that's what it will look like anyway. Izuku swallowed nervously, looking back at the towering hero. Why yes, All Might. It was me. I panicked. He attacked me, and my quirk activated defensively. All Might's smile widened. He walked forward, his massive hand coming down to rest heavily, but gently, on Izuku's shoulder. An electricity quirk with concussive force? Truly impressive, though you must be careful not to use unlicensed quirks in public. I believe we can make an exception for self-defense. You show great promise, young man. What is your name? Midoriya. Izuku Midoriya. Izuku practically saluted. Well, young Midoriya. I thank you for containing the threat. However, All Might pulled out a large, empty 2-liter soda bottle from his pocket. He moved incredibly fast, scooping up the remaining puddles of the sludge villain with practiced efficiency. I must take this fellow into custody properly. A hero's work is never done. Izuku watched in awe as All Might secured the bottle. This was the man he had idolized his entire life. The man he had wanted to be like. But as Izuku stood there, feeling the crackle of arc lights still humming in his veins, a profound realization washed over him. He didn't need to be All Might. He didn't need to emulate the symbol of peace perfectly, because All Might, for all his power, for all his glory, had arrived too late. If it hadn't been for Aegis, if it hadn't been for the light, Izuku would be a corpse on the floor right now. Quirks, even the strongest ones, had limits. They were bound by time, space, and biology. The light within Izuku felt limitless. All Might turned to leave, preparing to jump. Now, I must be off. The police are waiting for this delivery. Continue to work hard, young Midoriya, and perhaps one day I will see you in the field. Wait! Izuku called out. All Might paused, looking back over his massive shoulder. Yes? Izuku opened his mouth. 1,000 questions were on the tip of his tongue. Can I be a hero? Can someone like me, who was quirkless yesterday, stand at the top? But looking at All Might now, Izuku found he already knew the answer. Aegis had already given it to him. Izuku smiled, a small, genuine expression that reached his eyes. Thank you, All Might. For everything you do. I'll see you at UA. All Might gave a thumbs up. I look forward to it, young Midoriya. Plus Ultra. With a concussive blast of wind that nearly knocked Izuku off his feet, All Might leapt into the air, soaring over the city skyline until he was just a speck against the clouds. Izuku stood in the underpass, the wind whipping his messy green hair around his face. Slowly, Aegis decloaked, the little ghost spinning cheerfully by Izuku's head. Well, Aegis said, sounding amused. He certainly is loud. He's the greatest hero in the world, Izuku said softly. Perhaps, Aegis replied. But he is bound by this world. You are not. Come, Guardian. We should head home. You need to rest, eat something, and then, we begin your training. Izuku walked over to his dropped notebook. The cover was still scorched from Bakugo's explosion, the pages damp from the pond. Izuku picked it up, brushing the dirt off it. He looked at the title, Hero Analysis for the Future. He pulled a pen from his pocket. He crossed out the word future. Underneath it, he wrote a new word, Guardian. Izuku looked down the tunnel toward the bright light of the afternoon sun filtering in from the street. He didn't feel the crushing weight of despair anymore. The shadow of being a Deku had been burned away in an arc flash. He felt solid. He felt powerful. Aegis, Izuku said, taking a step forward. Yes, Izuku? What exactly does a Titan do? Aegis flew ahead of him, floating in the sunlight. A Titan builds the wall. And when the enemies of humanity try to break that wall, a Titan breaks them. I hope you're ready to learn how to punch things very, very hard. Izuku grinned. For the first time in his life, he felt the terrifying, exhilarating thrill of destiny. I'm ready, Izuku said. Together, the Guardian and his ghost stepped out of the shadows and into the light. The walk back to the Midoriya apartment complex was a blur of surreal, electrifying sensory overload. Izuku Midoriya felt as though he had been asleep his entire life, and had only just now opened his eyes. Every step he took on the pavement felt infinitely lighter, yet simultaneously more grounded. The world around him was sharper, the colors of the setting sun bleeding across the beautiful skyline in hyper-vivid hues of bruised purple and burning gold. He could feel it. Humming just beneath his skin, weaving through his veins and wrapping around his heart, was a thrumming, endlessly deep reservoir of energy. It didn't feel biological. It didn't feel like a muscle that could be strained or a stamina pool that could be emptied. It felt like standing at the edge of a roaring ocean, knowing that with a single thought, he could command the tide. Floating invisibly just over his right shoulder was Aegis. Izuku couldn't see the ghost, but he could feel a warm, comforting presence at the edge of his consciousness, a tether connecting his mind to the little machine. Your heart rate is elevated, Izuku. Aegis's voice resonated smoothly within Izuku's mind. Are you feeling unwell? I can run a diagnostic. No, I'm fine, Izuku whispered, keeping his head down to avoid looking like he was talking to himself. I can't believe this is real. I feel like I could run a marathon and not even breathe heavily. That is the light sustaining you, Aegis explained gently. Your physical form has been fundamentally altered. You are no longer strictly bound by the biological limitations of a baseline human. Micro tears in your muscles heal almost instantaneously. Lactic acid buildup is practically non-existent as long as you maintain your connection to the light. You are, in every sense of the word, a paracausal engine. Izuku reached his apartment door, his hand trembling slightly as he reached for the doorknob. Paracausal. You used that word before. What does it actually mean? It means you bypass the law of cause and effect, Aegis said, a hint of pride in his synthetic tone. In a causal universe, if you drop a ball, gravity pulls it down. If you strike a match, friction creates fire. Your world's quirks are causal. They might be extraordinary, They might mutate the human body to sweat nitroglycerin or manipulate gravity, but they still operate within the physical laws of this universe. They have biological limits. They require a catalyst. Izuku opened the door, slipping his red shoes off in the Genkan. And the light doesn't? The light does what you tell it to do, Aegis said simply. If you want fire, you do not need friction or fuel. You simply impose your will upon the universe, and the universe obeys. You command the light, and the light creates the fire from nothing. That is paracausality. You are a localized reality warper, Izuku. I'm home! Izuku called out, his voice cracking slightly as the magnitude of Aegis's words washed over him. Reality warper. Him. The quirkless Deku. Izuku! Oh, my baby! Inko Midoriya rushed out of the kitchen, wiping her hands on her apron. Her eyes, so similar to her son's, instantly scanned him for injuries. Earlier that day, the news had reported a sludge villain attacking a middle schooler, specifically Katsuki Bakugo. Izuku had stupidly, bravely rushed past the pro-heroes to try and dig his childhood friend out of the slime before All Might had miraculously appeared to save them both. Inko had nearly had a heart attack watching the amateur footage on her phone. "Mom, I'm okay," Izuku said, managing a soft, reassuring smile. And for the first time in a long time, it wasn't forced. "I'm perfectly fine." Inko pulled him into a bone-crushing hug, tears streaming down her face. "I was so worried. After what happened this afternoon, what were you thinking, running in like that? You don't have a quirk, Izuku. You could have been killed." A pang of guilt hit Izuku. "I was killed, Mom," he thought. "Just an hour ago. I died in an underpass." He hugged her back tightly, feeling an overwhelming surge of protective warmth radiate through his chest. "I know, Mom. I'm sorry. My legs moved on their own. But I'm okay now. Everything is going to be okay." Inko pulled back, sniffling, and looked at him curiously. She reached up, brushing a soot-stained piece of hair from his forehead. "You look different. You're glowing, Izuku, and you smell like a thunderstorm." Izuku internally panicked, but Aegis chimed in. "Tell her your quirk came in. It's the easiest lie." Mom?" Izuku stammered, stepping back. He took a deep breath. I think my quirk finally manifested." Inko froze. The silence in the hallway was deafening. "Why your quirk?" "But Dr. Tsubasa said." "I know what he said," Izuku interrupted gently. "But today, when the villain attacked, something just snapped inside me." He held up his right hand. He didn't need to try hard. The light was eager to answer his call. A small, brilliant spark of cerulean arc energy danced across his fingertips, crackling like miniature thunder. Inko's hands flew to her mouth. She stared at the electricity, her eyes wide with shock, disbelief, and then, a welling, profound joy. She fell to her knees, sobbing openly. "Oh, Izuku. Oh, my sweet boy, you waited so long." Izuku knelt beside her, wrapping his arms around her as she cried. He hated lying to her, but explaining that he was a resurrected paracausal warrior chosen by an extraterrestrial machine to fight an ancient cosmic darkness felt like a bit too much for a Tuesday evening. After a long, tearful dinner where Inko insisted on making his favorite katsudon to celebrate his late-blooming energy construct quirk, Izuku finally retreated to his bedroom. The walls were plastered in All Might posters. Action figures lined the shelves. It was a shrine to Heroes Society. Izuku sat at his desk, pulling out a fresh, pristine notebook. He grabbed a pen. Aegis materialized with a soft, digitized chime, his shells spinning lazily as he hovered over Izuku's desk lamp. "All right," Izuku said, his eyes burning with intense, analytical focus. "Tell me everything." For the next 4 hours, Aegis became a teacher, and Izuku, the ultimate student, absorbed knowledge like a sponge. Izuku wrote furiously, categorizing everything into a new notebook titled, Hero Analysis for the Future, Guardian Edition. He learned about the Traveler, the massive, silent, paracausal sphere that had uplifted humanity in another universe, bringing about a golden age. He learned about the Collapse, the terrifying, formless enemy known as the Darkness, and the Pyramids. "So, the light and the darkness are cosmic forces," Izuku muttered, tapping his pen. Like gravity or electromagnetism, but on a spiritual, reality-altering level. Precisely, Aegis said. The light is complexity. It is the desire for life to flourish, to build, to grow, to create something out of nothing. The darkness is simplicity. It is the blade that cuts away the weak until only the final, perfect, most dominant shape remains. They are locked in an eternal, cosmic game, and guardians are the traveler's final argument that complexity and life are worth fighting for. Izuku wrote down, light equals protection/creation. Darkness equals domination/reduction. And guardians are split into 3 classes? Izuku asked. More like 3 distinct philosophies of wielding the light, Aegis corrected. Hunters are scouts and survivalists. They channel the light through finesse, wielding cloaks, precision weapons, and agility. Warlocks are scholars. They seek to understand the mysteries of the universe, channeling raw, untamed paracausal energy into devastating spells and rifts. And titans? Izuku asked, sitting up straighter. Aegis's optic pulsed brightly. Titans are the unbreakable wall. They are the front line. When the city was surrounded by alien armies, it was the Titans who built the wall, and it was the Titans who held it. They channeled the light into sheer physical force, into impenetrable shields, into hammers of absolute destruction. They lead from the front. They do not flinch. Izuku looked down at his own scarred, scrawny hands. You think I'm a Titan? I don't think, Izuku. I know, Aegis said softly. When you rushed out to save your friend from that sludge monster today, you didn't have a weapon. You didn't have a quirk. You just threw your backpack and threw yourself into the fray to create a shield between him and death. That is the heart of a Titan. The light just gave you the armor to match it. Izuku swallowed hard, a fresh wave of tears threatening his eyes, but he blinked them away. He had cried enough today. It was time to get to work. Then I need to train, Izuku said, closing the notebook with a decisive snap. The UA entrance exam is in 10 months. If I'm going to pass, I need to know how to use this. I need a place to practice where I won't hurt anyone or damage the city. I have scanned the local geography, Aegis noted. There is a municipal beach nearby. Dagoba Beach. It is currently acting as an illegal dumping ground. It is isolated, filled with heavy, metallic debris, and borders the ocean. It is the perfect crucible for your early training. Perfect, Izuku said, standing up. He grabbed his sweatpants. Let's go. Izuku, it is 11 o'clock at night. I know, Izuku said, a determined fire burning in his emerald eyes. I've wasted 14 years being helpless, Aegis. I'm not wasting another minute. The air at Dagoba Municipal Beach was thick with the smell of rust and decaying seaweed. Mountains of broken refrigerators, rusted cars, and shattered electronics towered against the starlit sky like the ruins of a forgotten civilization. Izuku jogged down the stone steps onto the sand, his breath steady despite the 3-mile run from his apartment. He was barely sweating. The light coursing through him acted like a perfect internal regulator. Okay, Izuku said, rolling his shoulders. Where do we start? We start with the foundation of the Titan, Aegis said, materializing next to him. The void. Izuku blinked. I thought you said I used arc light earlier? You did. Arc is the element of motion, of sudden, violent reaction. It came naturally to you because you were in a state of absolute, explosive panic. But a true Titan must be grounded. The void is the element of gravity, of the space between stars, of absolute defense. Before you learn how to strike, you must learn how to protect. Aegis projected a holographic image in the air. It showed a towering, armored figure throwing up a massive, glowing purple barrier of energy. This is a barricade, Aegis explained. It is the manifestation of your will to deny the enemy ground. I want you to plant your feet, draw the light from your core, push it into the earth, and command the space in front of you to become solid. Izuku nodded. He stepped up to a towering pile of rusted washing machines. He closed his eyes, taking a deep breath, and tried to feel the energy humming inside him. He felt the buzzing of the arc, the static electricity that wanted to snap and break. But he pushed past it, reaching deeper. He imagined the darkness of space. He imagined gravity. He imagined a wall. He threw his hands forward, mimicking the hologram. Ha! Nothing happened. Izuku opened his eyes, panting slightly. Did it work? You pushed air, Izuku, Aegis said dryly. You are trying to flex a muscle. The light is not a muscle. It is a thought made manifest. You don't push a barricade out of your hands. You look at the empty air and you decide that there is a wall there. You must believe it with absolute, unshakable certainty. Try again. For 2 hours, Izuku tried. He grunted, he yelled, he waved his arms, but nothing happened. Frustration began to mount, settling heavily in his chest. I can't do it, Izuku panted, dropping to his knees in the sand. I'm trying, Aegis, but I can't feel it. You are overthinking it, Aegis said, floating closer. Your analytical mind is a strength, but right now, it is a cage. You are trying to figure out the physics of the void. There are none. Let go of logic. Before Izuku could respond, a voice cut through the sound of the crashing waves. Young Midoriya! Izuku jumped, spinning around. Standing at the top of the concrete stairs, silhouetted by the street lights, was a skeletal, impossibly thin man with unruly blonde hair. He wore a baggy white t-shirt and loose cargo pants. Izuku's eyes widened. He recognized the sharp, angular face, even without the massive muscles. All Might? The gaunt man descended the stairs, coughing slightly into a handkerchief. When he pulled it away, a speck of blood stained the white cloth. Indeed, my boy, though I suppose in this form, I look quite different. Izuku scrambled to his feet. What are you doing here? How did you find me? Tashinori Yagi smiled warmly. I visited your apartment. Your mother told me you had gone out for a run. I checked the local areas, and frankly, I had a hunch I might find you somewhere isolated. You strike me as the type to train in secret. Tashinori walked up to Izuku, his deep sunken blue eyes studying the boy carefully. He didn't miss the faint, residual crackle of static electricity dancing in Izuku's green hair, nor the absolute lack of fatigue in his posture. I owe you an apology, young Midoriya, Tashinori said softly. Izuku blinked, stunned. An apology? For what? Earlier today, before the incident in the alleyway, I saw you rush toward the sludge villain to save your friend, Tashinori said, his voice dropping into a solemn, respectful register. I saw the fear in your eyes, but I also saw your legs move when no one else's did. Not even the pro-heroes. Izuku looked down at the sand. I didn't do anything. I was useless. You had to save us both. No, Tashinori corrected sharply. You bought him time. You inspired me to act. I was at my limit, resigning myself to watch a boy die because I was too weak. But your actions, the sheer, unadulterated heroism of a boy without power, it forced me past my limits. Tashinori placed a heavy, bony hand on Izuku's shoulder. I tracked you down tonight for a very specific reason, Tashinori continued. I saw what you did in that underpass. I saw the aftermath. You possess a quirk of unimaginable destructive power, and yet your first instinct is not to flaunt it, but to protect. You have the heart of a true hero, Izuku Midoriya. Izuku stared at his idol, his heart hammering against his ribs. He's validating me. All Might is validating me, my power. Tashinori began, looking out at the ocean. The world believes it is a natural-born quirk. That I am simply blessed. But that is a lie. My quirk was given to me. It is a sacred torch, passed down from generation to generation, accumulating power with each bearer. It is called One for All. Tashinori turned back to Izuku, his eyes blazing with a fierce, intense light. I am dying, young Midoriya. My body is failing. I need a successor. Someone who understands the weight of power, someone who values life above glory. I came here tonight to ask you, will you inherit my power? Will you become the next symbol of peace? The words hung in the salty air, heavy and monumental. Izuku's breath caught in his throat. One for all. The power of All Might. The power to smash through any obstacle, to be the undisputed #1 hero. It was the dream he had chased since he was 4 years old, neatly wrapped and handed to him by his god. Izuku looked at Tashinori's desperate, hopeful face. Then, he looked over Tashinori's shoulder. Aegis was hovering there, invisible to the hero, silent and waiting. The ghost wouldn't make the choice for him. This was Izuku's life. Izuku closed his eyes. He felt the hum of the arc, the deep, resting gravity of the void, and a faint, warm flicker of something new, solar fire, waiting to be stoked. He didn't just have power now, he had a cosmic mandate. He was a guardian. The traveler had chosen him to defend humanity from threats far older and far darker than villains with quirks. If he took one for all, could his body even handle it alongside the light? Would it interfere with his paracausality? And more importantly, did he need it? Izuku opened his eyes. They were glowing, ever so faintly, with a piercing cerulean blue. All might, Izuku began, his voice surprisingly steady, completely devoid of his usual nervous stutter. What you're offering me, it's the greatest honor of my life. To be recognized by you. It means everything to me. Tashinori smiled, anticipating the acceptance. Then, but I have to decline, Izuku said firmly. Tashinori blinked, completely taken aback. I beg your pardon? I can't take one for all, Izuku said, bowing respectfully at the waist. The power I awoke today, it's not just a quirk. It's something I need to understand, something I need to master on my own. It feels limitless, but it's dangerous. If I took your power on top of it, I don't know what would happen. And Izuku stood straight, meeting Tashinori's eyes. Someone else out there needs that torch. Someone who doesn't have a spark of their own yet. Tashinori stared at the boy. He had expected excitement, tears, maybe disbelief. He had not expected mature, measured rejection. But as he looked into Izuku's eyes, he didn't see arrogance. He saw an immovable, unbreakable resolve. I see, Tashinori sighed, a small, genuine smile touching his lips. I cannot lie, I am disappointed. But I respect your decision, young Midoriya. You are right. A hero must walk the path that is true to themselves. I promise I will keep your secret, Izuku said quickly. About your injury, and about One for All. I know you will, Tashinori said, turning back toward the stairs. He paused, looking over his shoulder. If you ever need guidance, Midoriya, UA High School will be waiting for you. I look forward to seeing what kind of hero you become. I won't let you down, Izuku called out. As Tashinori disappeared into the night, Aegis drifted forward, dropping his cloak. That was a difficult choice, Aegis noted softly. You gave up the ultimate power of this world. Izuku turned back to the towering piles of trash. He raised his hands, his fists clenching. I didn't give up anything, Aegis. I just chose the vanguard. Now, let's try that barricade again. Izuku took a deep breath. He didn't try to force it this time. He let go of the physical world. He let go of physics, of logic, of cause and effect. He looked at the empty air and, with absolute, stubborn, tightened defiance, he decreed that a wall existed. Whoosh! A massive, towering wall of brilliant, semi-translucent purple energy erupted from the sand, tearing a trench in the beach as it stabilized. It hummed with the deep, resonant sound of a black hole, bathing the immediate area in a majestic violet glow. Izuku stared at it, his jaw dropping. He reached out, his hand passing harmlessly through the back of the shield, but when he picked up a rusted tire iron and threw it at the front of the barrier, the metal disintegrated into purple dust upon impact. Excellent, Aegis praised, his shell spinning rapidly in delight. Your will is strong, Titan. Now, do it 1,000 more times. The first 3 months, breaking the causal mind. The 10 months leading up to the UA entrance exam became a crucible of fire, lightning, and gravity for Izuku Midoriya. Instead of hauling trash to build physical muscle, Izuku used the trash as his enemies. Aegis was a merciless taskmaster, driven by centuries of military doctrine. Again. Aegis's voice cracked over the roar of the ocean. Izuku sprinted across the sand, his body wreathed in crackling arc energy. He wasn't just running, he was Titan skating, using microbursts of light to propel himself forward at speeds that defied friction. He closed the distance to a towering pile of rusted cars in a fraction of a second. He didn't punch. He channeled the arc into his shoulder and slammed into the pile with the force of a freight train. Crack THOM. The cars exploded outward, flying dozens of feet into the air. Izuku rolled through the sand, coming up onto his feet, panting heavily. Your momentum was good, but your entry angle was flawed, Aegis critiqued, scanning the wreckage. If those were heavily armored hive knights, you would have broken your collarbone. The light protects you, but physics still exerts kinetic feedback. You must channel the arc through the target, not at it. Reset. Izuku groaned, wiping sweat from his brow, but he summoned the light again. School became a secondary thought. Izuku sat in class, his notebook open, but he wasn't writing about Mount Lady or Kamui Woods anymore. He was diagramming the spread of a fist of havoc, calculating the optimal height required to maximize the area of effect for a thunder crash, and dissecting the thermodynamic properties of solar fire. Katsuki Bakugo noticed the change almost immediately. For the first week after the sludge villain incident, Bakugo had expected Deku to be his usual, cowering, muttering self. But Izuku wasn't. He was quiet. He sat up straight. When Bakugo slammed his hands on Izuku's desk, sparking explosions, Izuku didn't flinch. He didn't scream. He simply looked up at Bakugo with calm, glowing green eyes that seemed to hold a terrifying, immense pressure behind them. What are you staring at, Deku? Bakugo had snarled, though his voice lacked its usual venom, replaced by a strange uncertainty. Just studying, Kaken, Izuku had replied, his voice even and devoid of fear. Can I help you? Bakugo had scoffed and walked away, completely unsettled. The nerd had changed. He wasn't a pebble in the road anymore. He felt like a boulder. Months 4 to 6, the weight of the heavens. By the 6th month, Dagoba Beach was practically unrecognizable. The towering mountains of trash had been reduced to slag, melted down by solar fire or shattered into dust by arc fists. Izuku's physique had transformed. He wasn't the scrawny, trembling boy anymore. The light, constantly surging through him, had optimized his biology. He was dense, heavily muscled, with broad shoulders and a thick neck. He looked like a tank built in the shape of a teenager. It was during these months that Aegis taught him verticality. Titans are not bound to the earth, Aegis explained one evening, hovering above a particularly large mound of compacted refrigerators. Hunters jump. Warlocks glide. Titans lift. You ignite the light beneath you like a rocket engine. You command the air to hold your weight. Izuku stood at the base of the mound. He focused on his boots. He channeled the void, aiming for a controlled, gravitational burst. He jumped, activating the light. Whoosh. He didn't just jump. He launched into the sky like a ballistic missile, soaring 50 feet into the air in a single, terrifying burst of speed. Whoa! Izuku screamed, flailing his arms as he reached the apex of his flight. He looked down, seeing the beach far below. Gravity immediately took hold, pulling him down fast. Control it! Aegis yelled from below. Pulse the light! Break your fall! Izuku panicked. He tried to summon the void again, but his fear disrupted his focus. He hit the sand like a meteor, creating a massive crater. Crunch! Izuku lay in the crater, gasping in agony. My legs. I think they're broken. Aegis floated down, his optics shining a warm, healing beam of light over Izuku's shattered shins. The agonizing pain vanished almost instantly, the bones snapping back into place and fusing perfectly. Izuku sat up, rubbing his legs in disbelief. That really hurt. I warned you, Aegis said. I can heal you. I can even resurrect you if you die. But your nervous system still registers pain. Death is not a release for a guardian, Izuku. It is just a very painful inconvenience. You must learn to fight perfectly, so you do not have to rely on my healing. Now get up. Again. Izuku gritted his teeth, standing up. He wiped the sand from his face, looked up at the sky, and summoned the light. Months 7 to 9, forging the hammer. As the exam drew closer, Izuku focused on the hardest element of all, solar light. Arc was emotion and instinct. Void was will and discipline. But solar was creation and destruction perfectly balanced. It was the fire that burned away the impurity, but also the warmth that healed the wound. Manifest the weapon, Aegis instructed. They were standing on a jetty overlooking the dark ocean. A Titan does not just shoot fire. They forge it into an instrument of war. Izuku stood with his legs apart, his hands outstretched. He closed his eyes, digging deep into his core. He thought of his desire to protect. He thought of the burning, unyielding passion that had driven him to want to be a hero his entire life. He didn't just want to burn his enemies. He wanted to crush them. Flames, brilliant, blinding, and burning with the heat of a miniature sun, erupted from Izuku's hands. They didn't act like normal fire. They didn't lick or waver in the wind. They held their shape, solidifying, compacting. Izuku grabbed the flames with his right hand. He pulled. With a resonant, ringing clang that echoed across the beach, the fire solidified into a massive, heavy, blazing hammer of soul. Izuku opened his eyes, staring at the fiery weapon in his grip. He could feel its immense weight, but the fire didn't burn him. It felt like an extension of his own arm. "Throw it," Aegis ordered. Izuku reared back, his muscles coiling, and hurled the hammer out over the ocean. The hammer spun through the air, a comet of solar fury, illuminating the night sky. It hit the water 300 yards out. Boom! A massive pillar of steam and water erupted into the sky, creating a localized shockwave that rushed back to the shore, whipping Izuku's hair wildly. The water boiled and hissed for a full minute before settling. Izuku looked at his empty hand. The hammer was gone, but the power remained. He grinned, a fierce, feral smile of a warrior discovering his fangs. "Magnificent," Aegis praised softly. The final month, the vanguard hero. The morning of the UA entrance exam arrived crisp and clear. Izuku stood in his bedroom, looking at himself in the full-length mirror. He wore his standard black middle school uniform, but it was tight across his chest and shoulders. He carried himself with a posture forged by hundreds of hours of grueling, paracausal combat training. He didn't look like a nervous kid hoping to pass a test. He looked like a soldier preparing for deployment. Aegis materialized beside him. The ghost had a new look. Over the last month, Izuku had used his mother's sewing kit and some scrap materials to create a tiny, custom shell covering for Aegis. A little green and black hood that mimicked Izuku's old hero costume design, keeping the ghost's metallic frame hidden while adding a touch of personality. "Are you ready, Guardian?" Aegis asked, his optic pulsing with anticipation. Izuku reached out, tapping his knuckles affectionately against Aegis's shell. "I've died once already," Izuku said, a confident, calm smile playing on his lips. "A school entrance exam is nothing. Let's go show them what a Titan can do." Izuku grabbed his yellow backpack, slinging it over one shoulder. He walked out of his bedroom, his footsteps heavy and sure. The spark had been ignited. The symbol was forged. The vanguard hero was ready to step onto the battlefield. The towering, H-shaped monolith of UA High School gleamed in the morning sun, casting long, imposing shadows over the thousands of aspiring heroes funneling through its massive gates. It was a fortress of dreams, a monument to the extraordinary. For the last 14 years, Izuku Midoriya had looked at this building with a mixture of desperate longing and crushing despair. It had been the Mount Olympus of a world he was genetically barred from entering. Now, standing on the immaculate brick pathway leading to the main entrance, he didn't feel despair. He didn't feel longing. He felt the steady, rhythmic hum of a coiled spring, vibrating with paracausal energy. Izuku took a deep, centering breath, letting the crisp morning air fill his lungs. He was dressed simply but functionally, a tight, sleeveless compression shirt of dark gray that clung to his newly broadened chest and shoulders, thick black cargo pants, and reinforced steel-toed combat boots. He didn't look like a nervous middle schooler. He looked grounded. Solid. "Your heart rate is remarkably steady," Aegis murmured. The ghost was tucked safely out of sight inside one of the deep pockets of Izuku's cargo pants, acting as an earpiece through their neural link. "Optimal combat readiness. I must admit, I expected at least a minor panic attack." Izuku allowed a small, wry smile to touch his lips. He adjusted the straps of his small tactical backpack. "I died in an alleyway, Aegis. And then you made me fight a mountain of rusted cars for 10 months. A written exam and a few training robots don't really seem that terrifying anymore." "That is the Titan mindset," Aegis replied, sounding distinctly smug. "Though do try not to atomize the building. We need them to accept you, not file a restraining order." "I'll do my best," Izuku whispered back. He took his first step forward, but his heavy combat boot clipped a slightly raised paving stone. Physics, Ever the unforgiving mistress, demanded he fall. Izuku's balance shifted forward, and he prepared to instinctively pulse a micro-burst of void light from his palms to catch himself. Before he could summon the light, he felt a sudden lightness wash over him. Gravity simply ceased to apply to his body. He floated helplessly in midair, his arms windmilling for a moment before he stabilized. Oh! Are you okay? Izuku rotated in the air, finding himself face to face with the girl. She had short, bobbed brown hair, wide, kind eyes, and a permanent, rosy flush on her cheeks. She was holding her hands out, her fingertips pressed together. It's my quirk, she explained with a bright, nervous smile. Sorry for using it on you without asking, but it would be bad luck if you fell right before the exam, wouldn't it? She released the effect, and Izuku dropped the remaining few inches to the ground, landing lightly on his boots. In the past, Izuku would have turned the color of a tomato, stammered incoherently, and probably fainted from the proximity of a girl. Now he simply met her gaze, offering a warm, confident smile. Thank you? That's a really incredible quirk. Gravity manipulation is highly versatile. I'm Izuku Midoriya. The girl blinked, seemingly surprised by his calm and composed demeanor. Oh. Achiko Uraraka. Nice to meet you. You seem really calm. I'm super nervous. She laughed, rubbing the back of her neck. Just remember to breathe, Izuku said gently. Panic is the enemy of action. If you control your breathing, you control your body. Good luck in there, Uraraka-san. Thanks. You too, Midoriya-kun. She gave him a cheerful wave before hurrying up the steps to the auditorium. Izuku watched her go, committing her quirk and face to his encyclopedic memory. Gravity manipulation. A powerful ally on the battlefield, but potentially vulnerable to kinetic feedback if her lifting limit is exceeded. Get out of my way, Deku, before I set you on fire. The harsh, gravelly voice was like a match striking against dry wood. Izuku didn't flinch. He turned slowly. Standing a few feet away was Katsuki Bakugo. He was glaring daggers at Izuku, his hands stuffed into his pockets, though his shoulders were tense and hitched high. Bakugo looked exactly the same as he always did, angry, arrogant, and violently volatile. But Izuku wasn't looking at him from the bottom of a well anymore. Good morning, Kaken, Izuku said, his voice level and entirely devoid of its old, trembling cadence. Bakugo narrowed his crimson eyes, stepping closer. He hated this. He had hated this for 10 months. Ever since the sludge villain incident, Deku had changed. The nerd had stopped cowering. He had stopped muttering. He had stopped looking at Bakugo like a frightened rabbit. Deku had started looking at him like an equal. Worse, Deku had gotten huge. Beneath the compression shirt, Bakugo could see the thick, dense lines of muscle that hadn't been there a year ago. Bakugo reached out, his hand snapping forward like a viper to grab Izuku by the collar. He expected Izuku to flinch, to close his eyes, to apologize. Izuku did none of those things. He didn't even move. Bakugo's hand clamped onto Izuku's shoulder, and Bakugo felt a sickening jolt of shock. It was like grabbing a block of solid, immovable iron. Izuku's posture didn't shift a single millimeter. What kind of trick are you pulling, ha? Bakugo snarled, leaning in close, a few sparks of nitroglycerin popping against Izuku's shirt. You think you can just pretend you're not a quirkless loser? You think hitting the gym makes you hero material? You're a pebble, Deku. Izuku looked down at the hand on his shoulder, then back up to Bakugo's furious eyes. The air between them felt heavy. Izuku could feel the arc light responding to the aggression, humming in his veins, begging to be let out to neutralize the threat. He reined it in with a titan's absolute discipline. I'm not pretending anything, Kaken, Izuku said quietly. And I'm not a pebble. If you want to prove you're the best, you'll have to do it in the exam. Good luck. Izuku gently, but with terrifying, irresistible force, reached up and gripped Bakugo's wrist. He squeezed, just enough to let the blonde feel the unyielding, mechanical strength of a guardian's grip. Bakugo's eyes widened in genuine shock as Izuku slowly removed the hand from his shoulder. Without another word, Izuku turned and walked up the steps, leaving Bakugo standing frozen on the pathway, staring at his own hand. That was incredibly satisfying to watch, Aegis chuckled in Izuku's ear. Though I was fully prepared to transmat a void shield between you two, Not necessary, Izuku thought back. He's a bully Aegis. Not a threat. Let's focus on the mission. The auditorium was a massive, dimly lit amphitheater, packed with thousands of students. Izuku sat in his designated seat, his eyes locked onto the stage. The voice hero, Present Mike, burst onto the stage with his signature flamboyant energy. Welcome to today's live performance. Everybody say hey. Silence echoed through the massive hall. Tough crowd. Present Mike laughed it off, leaning into his podium. All right, listeners. Let's get down to the brass tacks of today's practical exam. You'll be experiencing 10-minute mock city battles. After this presentation, you'll head to your assigned battle centers. Izuku looked at his ticket. Battle Center B. He glanced sideways. Bakugo was sitting a few seats away, looking at his own ticket. Battle Center A. They separated students from the same middle schools to prevent cooperation, Izuku analyzed instantly. Smart. It forces raw, individual adaptation. Present Mike continued to explain the scoring system. 3 types of foe villains are stationed in each center. They are worth 1, 2, or 3 points depending on their difficulty. Your goal is to use your quirks to earn points by immobilizing them. Remember, anti-hero actions like attacking other examinees are strictly prohibited. Excuse me. A tall, broad-shouldered boy with blue hair and rectangular glasses stood up sharply, his arm raised straight into the air like a flagpole. A spotlight hit him immediately. On the printout, there are 4 types of villains. If this is a misprint, UA, the most prominent school in Japan, should be ashamed of that foolish mistake. We examinees are here in this place because we wish to be molded into exemplary heroes. The boy then turned dramatically, pointing an accusatory finger across the aisle. Furthermore, you, the boy with the messy green hair. Izuku blinked, realizing the boy was pointing directly at him. You have been sitting with your eyes closed and completely silent for the last 5 minutes. If you are not taking this seriously, then leave. You are distracting to those of us who are focused. The entire auditorium turned to look at Izuku. A few kids snickered. Izuku didn't blush. He didn't shrink into his seat. He opened his glowing green eyes and met the blue-haired boy's gaze with the terrifying calm of a veteran soldier. I was running a visualization exercise to memorize the layout of the battle center based on the pamphlet, Izuku said, his voice clear, even, and carrying effortlessly across the silent room. Mental preparation is just as important as physical readiness. Furthermore, if you look closely at the pamphlet, the 4th villain has a point value of 0. It is logically an obstacle, not a target. Present Mike was likely just about to explain that before you interrupted him. The blue-haired boy gaped, his arms slowly lowering. On the nose, listener! Present Mike shouted, pointing finger guns at Izuku. Thanks for the save. The 4th foe villain is worth 0 points. It's a massive obstacle. There's one in every battle center. You can defeat it, but there's no reason to. I recommend you listeners try to avoid it. That's all from me. Plus ultra. Izuku nodded respectfully to Present Mike, then looked back at the blue-haired boy. I meant no disrespect. Good luck in the exam. The boy flushed deeply, bowing stiffly at the waist. I apologize. I was too quick to judge. Thank you for the clarification. As the boy sat down, Bakugo, sitting a few seats away, ground his teeth together so hard they nearly cracked. What the hell is wrong with him? He's acting like a pro. You handled that well, Aegis noted. Though drawing attention to yourself before a tactical engagement is risky. I didn't draw the attention, he did, Izuku replied internally as he stood up. I just neutralized the verbal assault. Now, let's go break some robots. The entrance up to Battle Center B was a gargantuan metal gate that looked like it belonged to a maximum security prison rather than a high school. Dozens of teenagers were gathered outside, stretching, nervously activating their quirks, and chattering anxiously. Izuku stood near the front, rolling his shoulders and stretching his neck. He ignored the whispers around him. He felt the familiar, comforting weight of the light settling into his bones. He decided on arc. The void was for defense, and solar was for absolute, scorching annihilation. But this was an obstacle course designed to test speed, mobility, and immobilization. Arc was the element of the striker. It was perfect. He let out a long breath. As he did, tiny, imperceptible sparks of static electricity danced across his knuckles. High above, in an observation tower completely obscured by tinted glass, the faculty of UA High School watched the monitors. "We have quite a promising crop this year," Midnight purred, tapping her chin with her whip. "A lot of interesting quirks. We'll see." Eraserhead, Shota Aizawa, grunted, his eyes scanning the screens with sleepy skepticism. "A flashy quirk doesn't mean they have the instincts to survive. Look at them. They're treating it like a sporting event." Now, Eraser, they are just kids," the principal, Nizu, chimed cheerfully from his high chair. The small, white, bear mouse hybrid sipped his tea. "It is our job to forge them into weapons." Standing in the back of the room, looking gaunt and severely stressed, was Tashinori Yagi. He was watching Screen B intently, his blue eyes locked onto a boy with green hair and a dark compression shirt. "Show me, Midoriya. Show me this power you chose over mine." Suddenly, President Mick's voice boomed from the massive speakers around the battle centers. "Right, let's start. Get moving. There are no countdowns in real battles. Run, run, run!" While the other examinees jumped in shock, hesitating for a fatal second, Izuku moved. He didn't run. He ignited. A brilliant, blinding flash of cerulean blue light erupted from Izuku's boots. The concrete beneath him cracked audibly as he launched forward, leaving a trail of ionized air in his wake. To the students behind him, he looked like a bolt of lightning streaking through the open gates. "What the? Who is that?" Izuku was already 50 yards deep into the mock city before the others even crossed the threshold. His senses were dialed to the absolute maximum. The arc light hyper-accelerated his synaptic responses. He could hear the whirring of servos, the clanking of metal treads, and the hum of energy cells from blocks away. Target acquired. 10 o'clock. Approaching fast. From a side alley, a massive, two-wheeled robot with spiked arms rolled out, its red optic locking onto Izuku. "Target locked." Its mechanical voice droned. It was a two-pointer. Izuku didn't slow down. He accelerated. "Show them the wall," Aegis commanded. Izuku lowered his shoulder. He channeled the surging arc energy entirely into his right side, cloaking his body in a shroud of crackling, high-voltage kinetic force. He executed a flawless, textbook Titan seismic strike. He hit the two-pointer squarely in its central chassis. The impact sounded like a bomb going off. The sheer, power-causal kinetic force transferred perfectly from Izuku's shoulder into the machine. The robot didn't just break. It violently folded in on itself. Its armored plating shattered like glass, its internal wiring exploding into a shower of sparks. The machine was ripped completely off its wheels and sent hurtling backward through the air, smashing through the concrete wall of a mock building 30 feet away. Izuku skidded to a halt, electricity arcing off his body, perfectly unharmed. 2 points, his mind registered coldly. He didn't pause to admire his work. He spun on his heel, his boots crackling as he launched himself down the main avenue. 3 one-pointers emerged from across street, raising their blunted laser rifles. Izuku didn't dodge. He sprinted straight at them. As the first robot fired, Izuku raised his left arm. A small, buckler-sized pulse of void energy flared to life for a microsecond, batting the laser blast away into the sky. Before the robot could recalibrate, Izuku was in the air. He used a short, controlled Titan lift, hovering just above their heads. He slammed both his fists down into the cranial unit of the center robot. Fist of Havoc, microburst. The machine's head was crushed into a pancake of twisted metal, sending a shockwave through the ground that knocked the other 2 robots off balance. Izuku landed flawlessly, sweeping his leg in a devastating arc crackling with electricity, shearing the treads off the remaining 2 machines, immobilizing them instantly. 5 points. Time elapsed, 40 seconds. Back in the observation room, the silence was absolute. Every single pro hero had stopped watching the other monitors. Their eyes were glued to Screen B. "Good lord," Snipe muttered, adjusting his mask. "Did you see that kinetic transfer? He didn't use an explosive quirk. He just hit it." "No wind-up," Vlad King noted, leaning forward over the console. "No physical recoil on his own body either. He shattered solid steel with a shoulder check, and his bones didn't even stress." What is his quirk? Aizawa rapidly tapped on a tablet, pulling up the examinee files. Midoriya Izuku. Middle school record says quirkless until 10 months ago. Late bloomer. Registered quirk, energy construct. Energy construct? Midnight scoffed. That's not a construct. That's raw, localized kinetic manipulation. He's cloaking himself in high-voltage plasma. Nisa's beady black eyes gleamed with intense, terrifying fascination. Fascinating, truly fascinating. It doesn't follow the standard rules of biological emission, does it, Eraser? Aizawa's eyes were narrowed, his scarf shifting around his neck. No. Quirks like that, energy emitters, they have a tell. Sweating, overheating, muscle degradation. Look at him. He's not even breathing hard. He's moving with the efficiency of a machine. It's unnatural. Tashinori stood in the back, his hands gripping the railing so hard the metal groaned. So this is the power. This is what you chose. He felt a mixture of awe and profound relief. Midoriya didn't need one for all. The boy was a force of nature all on his own. Down in the battle center, it was a massacre. Izuku moved like a phantom wreathed in blue fire. He didn't fight like a teenager in an exam. He fought like a veteran clearing a hostile sector. A three-pointer descended on him from a rooftop, attempting to crush him. Izuku didn't lift away. He planted his feet, channeled the light into his right fist, and punched straight up. The arc-infused uppercut connected with the falling robot's chassis. The sheer upward force arrested the machine's momentum instantly, violently reversing it. The robot was launched back into the air, its core detonating from the internal pressure. 32 points. Izuku sprinted through an alley, encountering a cluster of examinees pinned down by 5 two-pointers. He recognized the blue-haired boy from the auditorium, Ida, using engines in his calves to kick the robots, but he was overwhelmed. Stand clear! Izuku roared. Ida turned just in time to see a blur of blue light rocket past him. Izuku didn't strike the robots. He slammed his fist into the ground. A localized shockwave of arc energy rippled through the asphalt. It wasn't an explosion. It was an EMP combined with a kinetic earthquake. The 5 robots seized violently, their circuits frying instantly as the arc light bypassed their physical armor and destroyed their motherboards. They collapsed into smoking heaps. Izuku stood up, electricity dissipating from his forearms. He looked at Ida, giving a sharp, tactical nod. Area secure. Keep moving. Before Ida could even utter a word of thanks, Izuku was gone, tearing around the corner in pursuit of more targets. Ida stared at the smoking robots, then at the empty alleyway. What incredible speed and power! I completely misjudged him. You're at 65 points, Guardian, Aegis chimed, sounding thoroughly entertained. I believe that is more than enough to secure a passing grade. You could safely extract now. Izuku jogged to a halt in the center of a wide intersection, his chest rising and falling in a steady, controlled rhythm. The mock city was eerily quiet now. Most of the robots in his sector had been reduced to scrap metal. 65 points, Izuku thought, wiping a single drop of sweat from his forehead. I feel fine. I haven't even touched the void or solar yet. The light is incredible. 2 minutes remaining. Present Mick's voice echoed across the city. Well, that settles it, Izuku muttered. I'll just patrol the perimeter and make sure no one is pinned down. In the observation room, Nisa hit a large red button on his console. He has completely dominated the field, Nisa said, his voice laced with manic glee. He possesses overwhelming offensive capabilities, flawless situational awareness, and zero hesitation. Let us see how our energy construct hero handles a true, insurmountable wall. Deep within Battle Center B, the ground began to tremble. Izuku stopped dead in his tracks. The loose pebbles on the asphalt were dancing. He felt a deep, resonant vibration vibrating up through his boots. Seismic activity, Aegis warned sharply. Massive localized displacement. Something very large is approaching your coordinates. Buildings at the end of the main street suddenly exploded outward. Dust and debris rained down like a meteor shower. From the dust cloud emerged a nightmare of steel and machinery. It was the zero-pointer. It towered over the mock city, dwarfing the buildings. It was a colossal, multi-story behemoth on treads, its massive arms ending in crushing hydraulic presses. Its single red eye glowed with malevolent intensity. Less than 2 minutes. President Mike yelled. Panic erupted in the streets. Examinees who had been fighting valiantly just moments ago broke, turning and fleeing in absolute terror from the mechanical leviathan. Run! It's too big! We can't fight that! Izuku stood in the center of the street, watching the crowd of teenagers sprint past him toward the exit gates. He analyzed the machine. 0 points. It's an obstacle. Tactically, engaging it is a waste of energy and a massive, unnecessary risk. The objective is to survive and score points. He turned to follow the crowd. He had passed. He had proven himself. Oh! Please, someone! The cry was weak, but in the sudden quiet of the fleeing crowd, it was deafening to Izuku. He whipped around. Through the dust, near the base of the massive robot's advancing treads, he saw a figure pinned beneath a slab of fallen concrete. It was the girl from the entrance. Uraraka. The 0-pointer was rolling forward, crushing everything in its path. In less than 20 seconds, it would roll right over her. Izuku's heart stopped. His analytical mind, which had been perfectly calculating points and risk assessment, vanished. In its place, a primal, ancient instinct roared to life. Titans are the wall, Aegis's voice echoed in his mind, fierce and unyielding. When the enemies of humanity try to break that wall, a titan breaks them. Izuku didn't run away. He turned to face the Leviathan. He planted his feet wide, his boots cracking the asphalt. He reached deep into his core, grabbing hold of the arc light. But he didn't pull a spark. He didn't pull a stream. He opened the floodgates. A localized hurricane of cerulean blue electricity erupted around him. The air pressure in the street dropped violently. The stray debris around Izuku began to float, suspended by the sheer, terrifying static field he was generating. His eyes stopped glowing and instead ignited like twin blue stars. In the observation room, the monitors tracking Izuku's area suddenly flashed with static interference. What's happening to the feed? Vlad King shouted. Energy spike, Nisa said, his paw hovering over the abort button. An unprecedented energy spike. He's drawing too much power. He's going to kill himself. Midoriya, don't. All Might whispered fiercely, stepping toward the glass. Down in the street, Izuku didn't hear them. He only saw the robot. He only saw the girl who needed protecting. He crouched low, his muscles coiling tighter than a steel cable. He activated his lift, but he didn't use the void to gently float. He used the arc to detonate. Crack boom. The asphalt beneath Izuku didn't just break, it vaporized. A crater 20 feet wide was left in his wake as he launched himself into the air. He broke the sound barrier instantly. A thunderous sonic boom echoed across the battle center, shattering the remaining glass windows of the mock buildings. To Uraraka, who was watching through tears of pain, it looked like a comet had just shot up from the earth. Izuku soared hundreds of feet into the air, reaching the eye level of the colossal machine. The robot's sensors registered the threat. Its massive arm reeled back to swat the nuisance out of the sky. Izuku didn't dodge. He pulled his right arm back. The arc energy surrounding him condensed, wrapping around his fist in a blinding, terrifying sphere of plasma and paracausal kinetic fury. He was a titan. He was the missile. Thunder crash. Izuku thrust his fist forward, his entire body following the momentum, and collided dead center with the 0-pointer's reinforced armored face. The silence that followed the impact lasted for a fraction of a millisecond, and then, the world ended. A shockwave of absolute, blinding blue light detonated outward. The sheer kinetic transfer was so profound that it bypassed the armor completely, traveling through the atomic structure of the machine. The colossal robot didn't just get punched. It ruptured. The metal groaned, screamed, and then violently tore itself apart from the inside out. The head of the machine caved in completely, exploding out the back in a shower of molten shrapnel. The shockwave traveled down its spine, blowing out its joints, shattering its treads, and detonating its central power core. The behemoth was decapitated and gutted in a single, paralyzing strike. The shockwave hit the ground, knocking every examinee in a 3-block radius off their feet. The wind howled, a hurricane of ozone and dust. In the observation room, The reinforced glass window actually cracked. The pro-heroes shielded their eyes from the blinding flash on the monitors. My God! Midnight breathed, her face pale. Aizawa was standing now, his eyes wide, his quirk automatically flaring, but knowing utterly that it wouldn't have done a damn thing against that. That wasn't a quirk. That was a localized natural disaster. High in the air, the headless, shattered remains of the zero-pointer began to fall backward, collapsing away from Uraraka. Izuku was suspended in the air, the arc energy slowly bleeding off his body like steam. He looked down at the ground rushing up to meet him. Normally, a fall from this height would shatter every bone in a human body. Izuku simply rotated, aimed his boots at the ground, and pulsed his lift. Whoosh! The void light flared beneath his feet, acting as a perfect, frictionless parachute. He descended rapidly, but right before hitting the ground, the light arrested his momentum entirely. He touched down on the asphalt with a soft, barely audible tap, landing directly in front of the trapped Uraraka. He didn't have broken legs. He didn't have shattered arms. He wasn't bleeding. He was breathing heavily, his chest heaving as the adrenaline and light flushed through his system, but he was whole. He was a god of war stepping off the battlefield. Time's up! President Mike screamed, his voice trembling slightly over the speakers. The buzzer blared, echoing through the silent, devastated city. Izuku let out a long, slow breath. The blue glow faded from his eyes, returning them to their soft, forest green. He turned around, looking down at Uraraka. She was staring up at him, her mouth open, her eyes wide with absolute, unadulterated awe. She wasn't looking at a boy anymore. She was looking at a savior. Izuku smiled, a gentle, kind expression that looked completely at odds with the monster who had just shattered the sky. He reached down, gripping the edge of the massive concrete slab pinning her leg. He didn't even need to summon the light. His Titan-forged muscles simply flexed, and he casually tossed the 3-ton slab aside like it was made of cardboard. Are you alright, Uraraka-san? Izuku asked, offering her his hand. Uraraka took it, her hand trembling. Izuku pulled her up effortlessly. I think my ankle is broken, she winced. But what? How did you do that? Who are you? Before Izuku could answer, a small, old woman with a syringe-shaped walking cane hobbled through the crowd of stunned, silent examinees. Recovery girl. Out of the way, out of the way, she grumbled. She reached Uraraka and Izuku, looking up at the smoking ruins of the zero-pointer, then back to Izuku. Did you do that, Sonny? She asked, her eyes narrowing. Yes, ma'am, Izuku said politely, bowing his head. Recovery girl scanned him up and down. She was used to healing shattered bones and torn muscles from kids who pushed their quirks too far. She expected this boy to be practically dead on his feet. Are you injured? She asked suspiciously. Izuku shook his head. No, ma'am. I'm perfectly fine. Recovery girl blinked, completely baffled. Not a single scratch? After that? She shook her head, turning to Uraraka. Well, let me fix this ankle. Give me a kiss, dearie. As Recovery girl healed Uraraka, the other examinees began to whisper, their voices carrying over the silent street. Did you see that? He didn't just break it, he annihilated it. And he's not even hurt. His quirk is a monster. He's going to take first place, for sure. Izuku stood amidst the whispers, feeling the weight of their stares. He didn't feel the crippling anxiety he used to. He felt a quiet sense of satisfaction. Mission accomplished, Guardian, Aegis whispered in his ear, his tone overflowing with pride. You built the wall. And you broke theirs. Let's go home. Izuku looked up at the sky, the smoke clearing to reveal the bright blue expanse above. He clenched his fist, feeling the faint, ever-present spark of the light waiting patiently for his next command. He was Izuku Midoriya. He was quirkless, but he was a Titan. And he had just conquered the Crucible. The hologram of All Might had flickered out days ago, but the words still echoed in Izuku Midoriya's mind. You didn't just pass, young Midoriya. You shattered the grading scale. You saved a fellow examinee, showcasing the true essence of a hero. With 74 villain points and 60 rescue points, you are the undisputed first place of the UA entrance exam. Welcome to your hero academia. Izuku stood in front of the full-length mirror in his bedroom, adjusting the stiff crimson tie of his UA high school uniform. The gray blazer was tailored to accommodate his newly broad shoulders and thick chest, the result of 10 months of grueling, paracausal conditioning at Dagoba Beach. He looked at his own reflection, tracing the steady, calm set of his jaw and the vibrant, glowing emerald of his eyes. The uniform is highly inefficient for combat, Aegis commented from his resting place on Izuku's desk. The ghost shell spun lazily, his blue optics scanning the fabric. Too many snag points. And a tie? It's practically an invitation for an enemy to choke you. Izuku chuckled softly, grabbing his yellow backpack. It's just for classes, Aegis. I have a hero costume for combat. Though, I have to admit, it feels strange not wearing combat boots. Just remember, Guardian, Aegis said, dematerializing into a stream of blue data that flowed seamlessly into the back of Izuku's consciousness. Today you step into their world. They will expect a student with a quirk. They will not be prepared for a titan wielding the light. Be mindful of their fragility. I will, Izuku promised silently. He walked into the kitchen, greeted by the smell of miso soup and grilled fish. Inko Midoriya turned from the stove, her eyes instantly welling with tears at the sight of her son in the prestigious UE uniform. Oh, Izuku, she sniffled, rushing over to adjust his collar, despite it already being perfect. You look so handsome. I'm so proud of you. I still can't believe it. First place. Izuku smiled, a warm, grounding expression. He placed his heavy hand over hers. Thanks, Mom. I promised I'd make it. I've got to go, or I'll be late for the first day. Have a good day. Be careful. Don't overuse your quirk. She called out as he slipped on his red sneakers, the only vestige of his old self he refused to discard, and headed out the door. The commute to UA was a quiet exercise in mental discipline. Izuku rode the train in silence, running through tactical scenarios in his head. Aegis had spent the last few weeks drilling Destiny-style combat philosophy into him. Control the engagement distance. Deny the enemy their preferred terrain. When in doubt, punch. Izuku navigated the massive, labyrinthine halls of UA High until he found the towering door marked 1A. He placed a hand on the handle, taking a slow, steady breath. The vanguard starts here. He slid the door open. The classroom was already buzzing with energy. The first thing Izuku saw was the tall, blue-haired boy from the auditorium, Tenya Ida, chopping his hand through the air as he lectured a seething Katsuki Bakugo about having his feet on the desk. Don't put your feet on the desk. Don't you think that's disrespectful to your classmates, and the upperclassmen who sat there before you? Ida barked. No, I don't, Bakugo sneered, leaning back with a feral, arrogant grin. What crappy middle school did you go to, you extra? Izuku stepped fully into the room. The moment his heavy boots clacked against the floor, Ida turned. The blue-haired boy's eyes went wide. He instantly abandoned Bakugo and marched straight toward Izuku, his posture rigid. You're Midoriya, correct? Izuku nodded calmly. Ida-kun. It's good to see you. I must apologize to you once again. Ida bowed deeply, at a perfect 90-degree angle. I misjudged you entirely during the entrance exam. You deduced the true nature of the practical test, realizing it was a test of rescue as well as combat. And your sheer power. It was staggering. I am completely defeated. You are the superior student. There's no need to bow, Ida-kun, Izuku said, placing a gentle hand on Ida's shoulder to straighten him up. We all reacted differently under pressure. You fought bravely in the alleyway. I'm looking forward to learning alongside you. Bakugo was glaring daggers at Izuku from across the room. The explosive blonde's eye twitched. Deku. He was speaking with the calm, measured authority of a pro. He wasn't stuttering. He wasn't shrinking away. Bakugo felt a profound, burning rage bubbling in his chest. I'll kill him. I'll expose whatever trick he's playing. Oh. It's you! The plain-looking boy who saved me. Izuku turned to see Achiko Uraraka bounding over, her face lighting up with a radiant smile. I was hoping you'd be in my class. That punch you did. It was like BM, and then whoosh and the robot was just gone. President Mike said you scored first place. That's amazing. I couldn't have done it without your gravity quirk catching me at the gates, Uraraka-san, Izuku replied smoothly. It's good to see you're fully healed. If you're just here to make friends, you can pack up your stuff and leave. The voice was tired, dry, and seemed to scrape against the floorboards. The three students froze, looking out into the hallway. Lying on the floor in a bright yellow sleeping bag was a haggard, unshaven man with dark bags under his eyes. He slowly unzipped the bag and stood up, sipping from a jelly pouch. It took you lot 8 seconds to quiet down, Shota Aizawa drawled, stepping up to the teacher's podium. Time is a limited resource. You kids aren't rational enough. Izuku's eyes narrowed slightly, instantly analyzing the man. Capture weapon around the neck? Loose clothing to obscure combat stance. He moves silently. Underground hero, eraserhead. Quirk, erasure. He's scanning the room like a predator evaluating prey, Aegis observed in Izuku's mind. Stay alert. I'm your homeroom teacher, Shota Aizawa, the man said, pulling a bundle of blue and white uniforms from his sleeping bag. Nice to meet you. Put these pea clothes on and head out to the training grounds. The training field was a vast expanse of dirt and meticulously painted white lines, bathed in the bright morning sun. Class 1A stood in a loose cluster, murmuring in confusion. A quirk apprehension test? The class echoed in shock. What about the entrance ceremony? Or guidance counseling? Uraraka asked, clutching her PE jacket. No time to waste on that subjective nonsense if you want to be heroes, Aizawa said, turning his back on them. UA is known for its unrestricted traditions. That applies to how the teachers run their classes as well. Aizawa pulled out a small electronic device. You kids have been doing these standard fitness tests since junior high. But you weren't allowed to use your quirks. The country still uses averages taken from results without quirks. It's irrational. The Ministry of Education is procrastinating. Aizawa's dark eyes lazily drifted over the students, locking onto Bakugo, and then, pointedly, onto Izuku. Bakugo. You finished second in the practical exam. What was your farthest softball throw in junior high? 67 meters, Bakugo grunted. Try doing it with your quirk, Aizawa instructed, tossing him a baseball. Do whatever you want, just stay in the circle. Hurry up. Give it all you've got. Bakugo stepped into the circle, a feral grin stretching across his face. He stretched his arms, the familiar scent of burnt sugar wafting into the air. He wound up, his muscles tensing. Die, he roared, igniting a massive explosion from his palm as he hurled the ball. The ball rocketed into the sky on a trail of smoke and fire. Aizawa held up the device. It beeped. He turned the screen to the class. 705.2 m. Over 700 meters? Seriously? An electric blonde boy named Kaminari gasped. This looks like fun. A pink-skinned girl, Ashido, cheered. Aizawa's eyes darkened, his capture scarf shifting slightly around his neck. Fun? You think you have 3 years to just have a good time? Idiots. Alright, new rule. The student who ranks last in total points across all 8 tests will be judged as having no potential, and will be punished with expulsion. The class erupted in panic. Expulsion? On the first day? Uraraka cried out. That's completely unfair. Natural disasters, massive accidents, villain attacks. Calamities that cannot be predicted, Aizawa countered, his voice cold and cutting. Japan is covered with unfairness. Heroes are the ones who reverse those situations. If you wanted a friendly chat at the local diner, too bad. For the next 3 years, you will inflict hardship after hardship upon you. Go beyond. Plus ultra. Overcome it with all you've got. Izuku stood perfectly still. He didn't panic. He didn't tremble. He looked at Aizawa, understanding the man perfectly. Aizawa wasn't being cruel. He was being highly efficient. He was weeding out the weak links before they could get themselves killed in the field. It was the logic of a vanguard commander. Aizawa noticed Izuku's absolute lack of reaction. The underground hero filed that away. Midoriya Izuku, the boy who obliterated the zero-pointer with a kinetic energy blast that defied modern physics. Let's see if you can control that raw power, or if you're just another reckless liability. Test 1, 50-meter dash, Aizawa announced. Izuku was paired against Ida. Ida crouched in the starting blocks, his exhaust pipes humming. I must warn you, Midoriya-kun, short sprints are my specialty. Then I'll do my best to keep up, Izuku replied evenly. Izuku didn't take a traditional sprinter's stance. He stood upright, his right foot slightly forward, his knees bent. He closed his eyes for a fraction of a second. Arc. Blue lightning suddenly crackled around Izuku's body, hissing and snapping against the dirt. The sheer static electricity made the hair on Ida's arms stand up. On your marks, a robotic voice chimed from the camera drone. Get set, bang. Ida launched forward, his engines roaring, but Izuku didn't run. He skated. With a microburst of arc light directed through the soles of his boots, Izuku bypassed the concept of friction entirely. He became a horizontal bolt of lightning. The air cracked with a miniature sonic boom. Before Ida had even taken his third step, the drone at the finish line beeped. 0.84 seconds, the robotic voice announced neutrally. Ida crossed the line at 3.04 seconds, his jaw dropping in absolute shock as he looked back. Izuku was already standing at the finish line, completely unbothered, the blue lightning dissipating into the air. He teleported. A red-haired boy, Kirishima, yelled from the sidelines. Aizawa narrowed his eyes. No. Not teleportation. Extreme kinetic propulsion. But his joints didn't shatter from the G-force. How durable is his body? Test 2, grip strength. Izuku stood by the machine. He didn't even use the light for this one. Aegis's training had simply made his base form a para-arousal anomaly of density and muscle. He gripped the handle. He squeezed. With a sickening crunch, the digital display spiderwebbed, and the heavy plastic and metal casing warped, then shattered completely in Izuku's hand. Bits of plastic clattered to the floor. Izuku looked at the broken pieces, a bead of sweat forming on his brow. Sensei? I think the machine was defective. Aizawa stared at the crushed metal in the boy's hand. He wordlessly handed Izuku another one. Test 3, standing long jump. Izuku stepped up to the sandbox. He channeled the void. The heavy, gravity-defying purple energy pulled in his boots. He jumped. He didn't arc through the air. He simply activated a Titan lift and floated in a straight, horizontal line, crossing the sandbox and landing gently 50 feet past the end of the sand. By the time the fifth test, the ball throw, rolled around, the entire class was looking at Izuku like he was an alien. He was dominating every single physical metric without even breaking a sweat. Bakugo was practically vibrating with rage, small explosions popping involuntarily from his palms. Midoriya. You're up, Aizawa called out. Izuku stepped into the chalk circle. He held the small, white baseball in his hand. Aizawa watched him intently from the sidelines, his hand resting on his capture scarf. He's holding back, Aizawa thought grimly. I watched the footage of the entrance exam. When he destroyed the zero-pointer, the energy output was astronomical. It shattered the street. It was a level of raw, destructive power akin to All Might. But here, he's using it in small, controlled microbursts. Aizawa's philosophy was simple. Power without control was a liability. He believed that someone with an overwhelmingly destructive quirk would eventually rely on it too much, causing collateral damage and putting themselves in danger. He had intended to use this test to break Midoriya's spirit, to show him that his energy construct quirk was too dangerous to use casually. But he is controlling it, Aizawa realized with a flash of irritation. He's perfectly regulating the output. But I still need to know. What happens when I take it away? What happens when the crutch is gone? Izuku wound up his arm. He decided to use solar light. It was the purest form of energy, and he wanted to see how far a hammer of soul's force could throw a physical object. He drew a breath. Golden, blazing fire began to ignite in the core of his chest, traveling rapidly down his right arm. The air around him shimmered with intense heat. From the sidelines, Aizawa's eyes suddenly flared a brilliant, glowing red. His messy black hair defied gravity, standing straight up in the air. Erasure. Aizawa locked onto Izuku's quirk factor. He felt the mental click that always accompanied the activation of his quirk. He severed the connection between Izuku's genetics and the physical world. Aizawa expected the fire to vanish. He expected Izuku to throw a normal, weak pitch. He prepared his lecture about over-relying on a quirk, but Izuku's arm didn't lose its fire. In fact, the flames burned brighter. Izuku felt a strange, cold tickle at the back of his neck, like a phantom draft of wind. But the solar light humming in his veins didn't even stutter. It roared. Izuku whipped his arm forward, throwing the ball. The baseball ignited. It became a miniature sun. The sheer, paracausal thermodynamic force propelled the ball out of Izuku's hand with the crack of a sniper rifle. It broke the sound barrier instantly, leaving a swirling trail of golden fire and displaced air in its wake. It shot up into the stratosphere, tearing through a low-hanging cloud and vanishing into the blue sky. The shockwave from the throw kicked up a cloud of dust that blasted over the rest of the class, forcing them to shield their eyes. Aizawa stood perfectly still, his red eyes wide, his hair still standing on end. The electronic device in Aizawa's hand vibrated violently. It beeped frantically before the screen simply displayed, "Error, out of range." The silence on the field was absolute, save for the distant, fading sonic boom. Izuku lowered his arm, the solar fire dissipating harmlessly. He turned to look at Aizawa. Aizawa blinked. His hair fell back down to his shoulders. His eyes returned to their normal, tired black. He stared at Izuku, his mind racing to comprehend what had just happened. "I erased it," Aizawa whispered, loud enough only for himself and Izuku to hear. "I was looking right at you. I felt the connection. I erased your quirk." "How did you?" Aegis chimed in Izuku's mind, sounding thoroughly amused. "He tried to turn off your genetics." "How cute." Izuku stood up straight. He didn't want to disrespect his teacher, but he needed to establish boundaries. He walked to the edge of the circle, looking directly into Aizawa's baffled eyes. "Sensei," Izuku said, his voice quiet but carrying a weight that felt as heavy as a mountain. "I felt you try to erase it. But my power, it isn't genetic. It's not a quirk factor you can turn off with a look. It's something else entirely." Aizawa narrowed his eyes, analyzing the boy's calm demeanor. He wasn't lying. The sheer impossibility of it grated against everything Aizawa knew about biology and hero society. A power that ignored erasure. A power that defied the laws of physics. Aizawa lowered the device, hiding his shock behind his usual scowl. A power that can't be erased. Interesting. But if you think that makes you invincible, you're wrong. Return to the group, Midoriya. Izuku bowed slightly and walked back. As he rejoined the class, Bakugo was practically frothing at the mouth. "DKU. What the hell was that? You cheating bastard, tell me how you did that." Bakugo lunged forward, sparks flying from his hands, fully intending to blast Izuku's face off. Before Izuku even had to raise a hand, Aizawa's capture scarf lashed out like a striking snake, wrapping tightly around Bakugo and binding his arms to his sides. Bakugo's quirk immediately sputtered out, Aizawa's red eyes glaring at him. "Stand down, Bakugo," Aizawa warned, his voice dangerously low. "Unless you want to be expelled right now. Stop making me use my quirk, it dries out my eyes." Aizawa released the scarf. Bakugo stumbled forward, breathing heavily, his eyes locked onto Izuku with a mixture of absolute hatred and, for the first time, genuine fear. The rest of the tests proceeded without incident. When the final scores were tallied and projected via hologram, Izuku's name sat comfortably at the absolute top of the list. Bakugo was second. "By the way, I lied about the expulsion," Aizawa said with a cruel grin, ignoring the collective shriek of relief from the class. "It was a rational deception to draw out your upper limits. We're done here. There are handouts with the syllabus in the classroom." "Midoriya." Izuku paused as the rest of the class headed inside. "Yes, sensei?" Aizawa looked at him, his dark eyes unreadable. "A power that can't be turned off is a heavy burden. Don't let it make you careless. The villains out there won't care about your upper limits. They'll just aim for your throat." "I know, sensei," Izuku said, his voice utterly serious. "I've already died once. I don't plan on letting it happen again." Aizawa frowned, thinking the boy was speaking metaphorically. "See that you don't. Go get changed." The afternoon, battle trial. The transition from physical apprehension to hero basic training felt like stepping from a frying pan into a furnace. "I am here!" All Might burst through the classroom door, striking a dramatic pose. Coming through the door like a hero, the class erupted in cheers. Even Izuku felt a thrill of excitement. All Might was still his idol, even if the dynamic between them had shifted on the beach that night. Hero basic training. All Might boomed, marching to the podium. The class that will put you through all sorts of special training to mold you into true heroes. And today, we're doing battle training, and to go with that, these, he pointed to the wall, which slid open to reveal numbered briefcases. Costumes made based on your quirk registrations and requests. Get changed and gather at Ground Beta. 10 minutes later, Class 1A walked out of the tunnel into the mock city of Ground Beta. They were a colorful, eccentric group of aspiring heroes. And then there was Izuku. He stepped out of the tunnel, and the chatter immediately died down. Izuku's hero costume was a masterpiece of intimidating functionality, heavily inspired by Vanguard Titan armor. He wore a dark, muted green undersuit made of a high-tensile, fire-resistant polymer. Over his chest and back was a thick, angular cuirass of matte black plasteel, designed to look like heavy riot armor but lightweight enough not to restrict his movement. His shoulders were protected by massive, asymmetrical pauldrons, the left one flat and broad, the right one spiked. A thick collar of faux white fur lined his neck, adding a rugged, veteran look. Heavy, reinforced gauntlets ran up his forearms, leaving his fingers free. Around his waist was a wide utility belt, and hanging from his right hip was a Titan mark, a half-skirt of dark, distressed fabric bearing a stylized white emblem of the Vanguard. Finally, a lower face mask made of sleek black metal covered his mouth and jaw, equipped with a rebreather and a comms unit. He didn't look like a high school student playing dress-up. He looked like a super soldier. Whoa, Midoriya! Uraraka jogged over, her pink and black suit looking very space-age. You look incredible. It's so armored. You look like a tank. Thanks, Uraraka-san, Izuku smiled, though the metal mask hid it, only showing the crinkle of his eyes. You look great too. Highly mobile. Perfect for your quirk. All Might stood at the front of the group, his eyes lingering on Izuku's armor. He embraces the role of a shield, Tashinori thought proudly. A fitting image for someone with that much power. Now then. Time for combat training. All Might announced. The setup is simple. Villains have hidden a nuclear weapon somewhere in a building. The heroes must go in and secure it, or capture the villains. We will draw lots to determine teams. Izuku pulled his lot. Team A. I'm Team A too. Uraraka cheered, holding up her ball. We're a team, Midoriya. Excellent. Izuku nodded, his tactical mind already whirring. And the first matchup will be. All Might plunged his hands into the villain and hero boxes. Team A are the heroes. Team D are the villains. Izuku looked across the crowd. Holding the D ball, shaking with barely contained fury, was Katsuki Bakugo. Ida stood next to him, adjusting his glasses. I see, Izuku murmured. The universe has a sense of humor, Aegis commented from his hidden compartment in Izuku's chest armor. Villains, you have 5 minutes to set up. Heroes, you will wait outside. All Might declared. The engagement. Izuku and Uraraka stood outside the massive, multi-story concrete building. Izuku was looking over a holographic map projected from his gauntlet. Okay, here's the plan, Izuku said, his voice distorted slightly by the comms mask, giving it a deep, commanding resonance. Ida is highly disciplined. He will stay on the top floor and guard the weapon. Bakugo is impulsive, and he hates me. He won't wait for us to come to him. He'll try to ambush us early to take me out. Uraraka gulped nervously. Bakugo is really scary. Are you sure? Positive, Izuku said. When we go in, stay behind me. When he attacks, I will engage him. You use that distraction to slip past, float up the stairwell, and locate the bomb. Engage Ida only if necessary. I'll handle Bakugo. You're going to fight him alone? She asked, worried. Izuku looked at the building, his green eyes flashing with a sudden, violet hue. I won't be alone. Trust me, a buzzer sounded. Hero team, infiltrate. All Might's voice echoed. Izuku and Uraraka slipped through a first-floor window, stepping quietly into the dimly lit, labyrinthine corridors. Izuku walked point, his heavy boots making surprisingly little noise. His posture was perfectly balanced, his hands raised in a low, ready guard. They turned a corner into a long, windowless hallway. Clack! Izuku heard the subtle shift of a boot against concrete around the next corner. Get back! Izuku ordered, shoving Uraraka behind him. Bakugo erupted from around the corner, launching himself through the air with a massive explosion propelled from his left hand. His right hand swung in a lethal right hook, aimed directly at Izuku's head, sparking with nitroglycerin. Take this, DKU! Bakugo roared. Izuku didn't flinch. Time seemed to slow down. Aegis's training took over. Don't meet force with force if you don't have to. Redirect. Izuku stepped smoothly to the left, inside Bakugo's guard. He raised his heavy, plasteel-reinforced left gauntlet, parrying Bakugo's explosive right hook upward. The explosion detonated against the ceiling, blowing away chunks of concrete, but missing Izuku entirely. Before Bakugo could recalibrate, Izuku's right hand shot out, grabbing Bakugo by the front of his grenade-shaped gauntlet. Using Bakugo's own forward momentum, Izuku pivoted, slamming the blonde violently face-first into the concrete floor. Wham! The breath left Bakugo in a violent gasp. Go! Now! Izuku barked to Uraraka. Uraraka nodded, sprinting past the downed Bakugo and disappearing up the stairwell. Bakugo scrambled to his feet, his face red with rage and a bruised cheek. You bastard! You read my move! Izuku stood in the center of the hallway, his posture relaxed but utterly immovable. You always lead with a right hook when you're angry, Kakin. You're predictable. Shut up! Bakugo screamed, launching himself forward again, unleashing a flurry of rapid-fire explosions. Izuku engaged. This wasn't a fight using the light. This was raw, Vanguard-taught close-quarters combat. Izuku ducked, weaved, and blocked. His armored gauntlets absorbed the kinetic shock of the explosions, the heat barely registering against his fire-resistant suit. Bakugo threw a wild left cross. Izuku caught it, twisted Bakugo's arm, and delivered a devastating, non-lethal knee strike to Bakugo's midsection. Bakugo coughed up spit, stumbling backward. In the monitoring room, the rest of Class 1A was watching in stunned silence. Midoriya is dominating him, Kirishima said, his eyes wide. He hasn't even used his quirk yet. It's pure martial arts. He's reading Bakugo like a book, Momo Yayorosa analyzed, her eyes tracking Izuku's flawless footwork. He's not just dodging, he's controlling the space. He's forcing Bakugo into unfavorable angles. All Might watched the screen, gripping the microphone. Incredible. He's holding back his immense power to avoid destroying the building, relying entirely on technique. Back in the hallway, Bakugo was panting, clutching his stomach. His pride was shattered. Deku, the quirkless loser who used to follow him around like a stray dog, was beating him into the ground without even trying. Why won't you use it? Bakugo screamed, his voice cracking with hysterical rage. You used it against the robot. You used it in the ball throw. Are you looking down on me? Do you think you can beat me without your quirk? Izuku stood tall, the shadows of the hallway catching the edges of his armor. I don't want to hurt you, Kakin. My power isn't meant for you. Just surrender. Uraraka is already on the top floor. You've lost. I haven't lost until you're dead. Bakugo raised his right arm, stepping back. He reached his left hand over to the massive, grenade-shaped gauntlet on his right arm. He gripped the metal pin. They designed these gauntlets to store my nitroglycerin sweat, Bakugo said, a manic, dangerous glint in his eyes. If this is fully charged, the blast will level the entire floor. Izuku's eyes widened behind his mask. He's actually going to do it. He's going to fire a lethal blast in a confined space. In the monitor room, All Might panicked. Young Bakugo, stop. Are you trying to kill him? If you pull that pin, I'll stop the match. Bakugo didn't care. He was lost in the red haze of his own shattered ego. He'll be fine if he dodges. Bakugo pulled the pin. A blinding, terrifying light erupted from the barrel of the gauntlet. The air inside the hallway ignited instantly. It wasn't just an explosion, it was a localized thermobaric weapon. A massive, roaring pillar of fire, concussive force, and superheated air rushed down the hallway, vaporizing the wallpaper and cracking the concrete walls. Izuku had a fraction of a second to react. He could have dodged. He could have used arc light to skate out the nearest window. But if he did, the blast would carry through the building. It could hit the structural supports. It could travel up the stairwell and hit Uraraka. Titans do not run. Izuku planted his feet wide, dropping into a low, braced stance. He didn't channel arc or solar. He reached into the deepest, coldest, most unyielding part of his soul. He called upon the void. Aegis! Izuku roared. Hold the line! The ghost shouted back. Izuku threw his left arm forward. A massive, brilliant disk of solid violet light erupted from his gauntlet. The sentinel shield.